During our period, we saw, when we were in Tevi, we saw these guys with these big old time muskets, and it was in July, I think, something like that. And when we get to Tanzania, we realized that it was a coup. Idi Amin was taking over at that time. Okay, in the Sudan, Numeri had just came back for his third time. The way they do over there is whatever's harmful to you, the government support. Like you notice, we don't have long periods of tranquility and rest in none of our countries.
Right.
It don't make no difference. And whatever they do, it divides up the people, divide, conquer, and rule, same old British. It's just mean what they do to us. And their whole strategy is based on that. Divide you up, put you this group against that group, the whites against the blacks against the whites, the Ethiopians against the Eritreans, and this, that, or the other.
That's right.
And like the Arab brothers say, pretty soon they try to divide you between yourself and your wife, which they do. You know.
That's right.
Okay, now, for the question that you asked, the U.S. has presidents and leaders that are very, very bad, like George Bush and the old Bush. And they have, for us, and then they have presidents that are very bad, and then they have them that are bad. You know, okay, so if you take Bill Clinton looked at Somalia and he said, I ain't messing with that. And he didn't mess with it too much. Okay. But when something came up, he shot a missile at Sudan, and he shot another missile in Afghanistan. And he brought down that hospital, Al-Shifa hospital. But they made medicines and everything. Okay. Because Shifa means healing and medicine. Okay. So just taking the world in general, the general rule is that they try to take a minority or people that feels like they're a minority and give them power. The British did it, like for instance, if the Japanese would have won World War II, what do you think they would have did with us? They would have put us in charge. Why? Because we're a minority, and the white folks been doing us in, and we know everything about them. We cook their food, we keep care of their children, right? Not that they just had the, what was that black, that was the Black Dragon Society. Anybody ever heard of that? Black Dragon Society, Elijah Muhammad. That's right, I'm telling you. All right. And Elijah Muhammad gave tons of lectures. That's why he went to the penitentiary, not because he was 44 years old and too old for the draft anyway, because black people thought Japan was great for us because it was people of color. Anyway, let me get back to the question you asked. About Sudan, about anybody over there, if the Americans have a strong man over there, like Saddam Hussein, and they finish their work, like fighting against the Iranians, then the Americans come and get him, because he has that big army there. And that big army is a threat to the Zionists, right? That big army that's fought, and they train now And if you take them and the Syrians and everybody else, they'd give the Zionists a run for their money. So the Zionists say you gotta chop him down. So the Zionists are the ones that tell them, you get Saddam and whip him on up and we're fine with that. So Afghanistan, they got a revolution next door, and we got to get in there and make sure. So the Russian invasion was right after, so they working together with the Americans, which you never know. They came right in and occupied the country and killed 1.6 million people. That's the Russians in those days. Okay, why? Destabilize all of our area. Never give Syria a chance. Syria was like a flower in the Middle East. Just nice. Everybody was doing pretty good. Okay. And it was a pretty well-run country. Now the whole infrastructure is finished. Okay. Now, Sudan. When we was in Sudan, we went over a few years ago. I'd been there several times before, but this was a special thing, you know, Hadar and them hooked up all that thing, and they had ministers and everybody. So the reason that we went along is because of two issues: female genital mutilation and the issue of slavery. If you mention to the girls that whatever happened, you become a Muslim lady, they're gonna clip off part of your vagina, and where you can't feel nothing. And that's, of course, it's more of an African custom than it is an Islamic custom, but they both do it. So sometimes. So anyway, and then if you tell the girls that's gonna happen, how many American women gonna accept in Islam? Then if you talk to the boys about slavery, well, we feel like we're still in it almost, right? So those two issues, that's why I went to Sudan, to deal with those two issues and make sure that all the Republic of New Africa and all other people that went along, that they were, and the preachers over in Baltimore, that they would come back and talk to the people about what was really going on in Sudan. Okay, now for us, if you notice, there's not been hardly any Sudanese at this masjid, where over on 8th Street and other, it was packed with Sudanese. It's because the Sudanese here didn't like the government. I said, we don't have nothing to do with the government. It's about what the America is saying about Sudan, right? And we had a program right here in this masjid. And the Sudanese said, well, you went over there with Bashir, you with that. I said, that's not why we did none of that. We did that for an American reason. That when they hear about Sudan, they hear about slavery. When they hear about slavery, no Negro want to have nothing to do with it. If you tell a lady they're going to clip part of her vagina off, she definitely don't want to have, especially the part where the feeling is involved. She says, shoot, it's hard enough getting going now. You know, it's some fun, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, now in the Sudan, what's going on now? A few years ago, you notice there's never been any harmony with so-called Sudan, because Sudan does not cooperate enough with U.S. policy. Okay, so.
But the people out there yesterday were waving the American flag.
Of course. When what's the name was here, myself and Sister Bahia, when what's the name, Hassan Tarabi was here. Mm-hmm. We went down to the Department of Strategic Studies to hear him. And we sat in back of it, because I looked, so he has no security here in America. So I sat right in back of him to make sure. I was doing this on purpose. Outside, when he went outside, the Sudanese was shaking his car and everything, and the police was just eating popsicles almost. They didn't care. So right away I said, oh, I see what this is. Hassan Tarabi is the Islamic movement, right? And the other Sudanese, these Sudanese, some of them, they like them. They homeboys. They home folks. Okay, so whatever you are in Africa, in the Sudan and other places, it's based on what you're doing and how you can be used against your people. That's your value. How can we use Southern Sudan, fight Northern Sudan on the issue of color? Bull crap. When I was in Sudan, they got the State House here, and across the street and right next to the State House is the biggest church in the Sudan. And all the Christians in the South was migrating to the North because they got more protection in the North than they did in the South. But when you heard the news, you would hear that the Sudanese, the Janjaweed, y'all remember when they,
Right.
and the Sudanese would laugh because they had one leader, the Janjaweed, that was light. They said they must have really scraped that up because the Janjaweed, I said, boy, they had to hustle that up, to get that guy. Because the Janjaweed don't look like him, but he was light, and it looks like, whatever they say, the northern, light-skinned, wavy-headed Sudanese against the black Sudanese.
Right.
And the Sudanese come in here, you can't tell him from a Negro until he opened his mouth.
That's what I noticed. I noticed that they mostly all dark-skinned up north too. They just got different texture hair.
They got a little different color, texture hair. Now, the closer you get to the Egypt, the wavier the hair get, the farther you get to the south, the more, because they have distinct looks. A southern Egyptian looks the same as a northern Sudanese. They have the same black, same little bit of one or two waves in their hair. You can, once you're in that area, you can see it, but these people now, the liberals, the women, remember, anytime they take somebody, always get the minority and support them, because women is not a minority. But these so-called liberals is against the army. Well, why did they bomb Al-Shifa Hospital? Right? Why do they keep the Sudanese, which would be the breadbasket of Africa? Right? Why do they keep it in turmoil?
Right. The Congo, the Sudan, all those countries that can be breadbaskets.
That borders around.
Right.
In fact, before Southern Sudan, Sudan used to border on 10 countries. And all of those countries, they had a refuge in Sudan. When this happened in Eritrea, and the Ethiopians, they could come and rest in Sudan. Whenever it was Somalia, Ugadan, and all of that, right? Back and forth, they could come to Sudan. Okay. The thing is, who is the West pushing right now? They're pushing the sisters, famous leaders, right now. When they're doing that in a male type country, that they're trying to destabilize it. Now remember, many of the dictators are dictators, and many of the crews are not the nicest guys in town. But there's bad, and then there's worse. And then there's the worst of the worst. So what's better for the people? That they can have a stabilized government that's almost impossible in Africa, right? And they can get something done, but not everything done. So the U.S. is going to approach them, and they're going to try to bring a crew in that can never have stability. Okay, so people might say, well, the military came back. Some places the military can keep order. And if you think the good guys that you knew going to school here are going to not steal money, and they're Africans, I'll close with this. I'll tell you the story. Y'all have heard it before. There's a Chinaman and an African. They went to school here together. And the Chinaman went back to China, and he called his African friend, "Hey man, come on over." And he took him up to this great place he was, and he drew back the curtain. He said, "Look at all of that development." He said, "Do you know I get 10% of all of that?" So the African said, "Oh," so he went back home, called the Chinaman, "Come on over and visit, things was rolling." So when he drew back the curtain, he said, "I don't see nothing." He said, "That's right, I get 100% of the whole show. I steal everything." The Chinaman, in other words, steals 10% and let everything else develop. The Negro, he draw back the curtain. He said, "Now look at that." He said, "There's nothing." He said, "That's right, I get 100% of all of that." You know, and that's just a story that they tell, but it kind of gives you an idea. Now, for the Sudan, you and I would be comfortable in Sudan. I'll tell you why. When we was in Sudan, this is the last time, we had brothers, they would, we would be riding. There's Khartoum is over here on this side of the Nile, and Durman is on the other side of the Nile. So they're sister cities. So we'd be riding down the Nile, and it's just nice. So first the brothers would have Quranic tapes and stuff on, and then I said, "This all y'all listen to?" Popped the glove compartment open and stuck in what they listened to all the time, and it was all right. We just, hey man, we was riding down the Nile with Sudanese, and since they have earphonic or Sufi stuff too, they be throwing down, and we would like it all. You know what I mean? Then they have singers, Hanan Neely, this is a blind lady, Hanan of the Nile. And you be hearing all that. I said, I like it, but
They was jamming. I mean, that's one thing I noticed at the thing. They were, you know, they had their little thing that they was doing. And I was looking.
Here's what they say. They say we're African and Islamic, which they are. The Negro would feel comfortable because he got his Islam, but whatever the version you want to take, they got it there for you. You want to be a super Sufi, you want to be a Mahdist, you know what I mean? You could go, and we would feel comfortable there, you know. And they don't argue with nobody about what they do, you know. They're not like Daesh and all them. Well, we'll kill you, your blood is halal. If that was so in Sudan, everybody would be dead. Because everybody, but anyway, what we do on them countries is we keep an eye on who initiates, or who America likes. If America is saying they're having a gut uprising in Sudan, it's because they done started it and they're gonna fund it, and that the president or the dictator is not cooperating enough with them.
Yeah, because I don't know if you heard it, but the interviews that I saw the brother, a couple of times he thanked Iran.
Yeah.
So, you know, that kind of, you know, gave me
Iran and
understanding.
Sudan, and oil and all of that.
Right.
Divide, conquer, and rule. That's the reason we look at China and Iran right now. People got to stop hollering about are they perfect? That's insanity.
Or China and Africa.
China and Africa, okay. That's why we keep, we have to let the Chinese know, and somebody's listening to something. So we have to let them know what it looks like. Just, you gotta, trying to bring all get rid of all the deserts in China. 60% of China is desert. So bring all the people from Africa back, redivert those 3 gorges down, redivert some of those rivers, right? And pump some of that water over some of those hills and have it flowing back the other way. That's all you do. Back the other way and create your new river system, and all of that 60% of China that's not used, it'll be green again. So bring the Chinese in Africa back to China. And then now the rest of the Chinese, we mentioned it before. But the Chinese in Malaysia and Indonesia, they're the richest people in those countries. And those are big Muslim countries. In fact, Indonesia is the biggest Muslim country. And have them give us a card and everything and say, we want to help the brothers, and just choose a few countries. They'll be friendly with the people there. And they can go buy the big cars they want, because they have so much money, but they can't show it off. Because the people in Malaysia and Indonesia are getting mad. Because the